When you install Node, it already comes bundled with a whole bunch of built-in modules. These are essentially libraries of code that the Node team wrote so that they can help you with day-to-day things that you might want to do using Node. Now, we mentioned that by liberating JavaScript from the browser using Node, we can now use Node.js to interact with the computer directly. So a good example of that is we can use Node.js to get access directly to the local files of the computer. So let's take a look at one of the built-in modules for Node that helps us to do that. So if you head over to nodejs.org/APIs, then you can see all of the native modules and the documentation of how you can use it. Now, if we have a look in the left-hand bar here, there's something called the file system. And as you might predict, this helps you interact with the local file system using Node. Now, there's a whole bunch of methods and properties that you can tap into. But in order to use the module, we first have to require it. Now, if we head over to Atom and add that new project folder that we created earlier on into our sidebar, so intro to Node, and we can delete our console.log in our index.js. Now, instead of having that, we're going to use the file system module, and we're going to write this line of code in order to use this module. So the first thing we write is a keyword called const. And up till now, we've not been using this keyword at all. We've been using something called var. Now, var creates a variable where, say, for example, if I said var a equals 2, then later on I decide to change the value of a now equals 5, then this is how you can use vars to vary your variable. Now, const stands for constant. And if I create a constant and I assign it a value, later on, I can't change the value. I can't then say a now equals 5. It'll actually give me an error, and it'll tell me that attempting to override a, which is a constant. That means that once you've assigned it a value, you can't change constants anymore. And this is useful when you're creating containers that are not going to be changed or meddled with later on. So for example, if in my website I needed to use the value of pi, then pi is never going to change, right? So I might just create a constant called pi and set it to 3.1415.9, and that's about all I can remember. So in this case, we're creating a const called fs, and that stands for file system. Now you can call this constant whatever you want. You can call it file system, but for simplicity's sake, we're just going to call it fs. And we're going to set it to equal the file system module. And in order to use libraries of code or modules or packages inside our project, we have to require the module. And the module is called fs. So let's go ahead and add that in here. So here's our brand new constant called fs, and it is set to equal the module that is fs, and we get access to it using this require method from Node. Now, at the moment, Atom is giving me a warning here, as you can see from this little yellow dot, and it's telling me that the JSHint package that I installed to keep my JavaScript code tidy and consistent with other programmers is giving me a warning saying that const is only available in ES6, is the latest stable version of JavaScript at the time of recording. And I can switch off these warnings by simply writing a comment that says JSHint ES version : 6. And this will tell the linter that I'm actually using ES version 6. Don't worry about the weird syntax. This is simply a new feature of our ES version 6 of JavaScript. So now that we've required fs, that means that we've incorporated this file system module into our project, and we're now able to use it in our project. Now, what are the sort of things that you can do using file system? Well, there's actually a whole bunch of things that you can do. For example, you can specify paths, you can open files, you can change files, you can access and read and write to the local file system. But as we said before, we should be able to access and manipulate the local files if we're using Node.js. So let's just use one of these methods to show you that this is possible. So inside my intro to Node, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it file1.txt. So this is just a pure, simple text file. And inside here, I'm just going to write a little bit of text. I am file 1. Hit save, and now I'm going to go into my index.js and I'm going to use this method called copy file sync in order to create a copy of my file, file 1. So our docs will tell us how to use it, and what we have to do is first, of course, require the module, and then we're going to call the method and we're going to pass in 2 parameters. So the first parameter is the source, so that's the source file name to copy. And the second one is the destination, which is the destination file name to copy to. So that seems pretty easy. So all we have to do is say fs.copy file sync, and the source file is called file1.txt, and the destination file, we'll just call it file2.txt. So what this line of code will do is it will look within the current directory, so intro to node folder. It will look for a file that's called file1.txt, and then it will copy it to something called file2.txt. Now currently file2.txt doesn't exist, so this is going to be the name of our copy. So now if I hit save and I head over to Hyper and make sure that you're still within the directory that our index.js is contained, which I previously called intro to node. Now here I'm going to use the node command, and then I'm going to run the index.js file using node.js. So now that I see my prompt again, so my name plus the $, that means that this execution has completed. So now if we head into Atom and we look inside our folder intro to node, you can see I now have 2 files. File 1, which still has the same content as before, and also file 2, which now has the copied content from file 1. So if file 2 already existed, then this copy file sync will simply replace the existing content. So let's say that in file 2, we have some text saying that I am file 2.txt, and we hit save and we run our script again, then it will again try to replace what's inside file 2 with a copy of what's inside file 1. So file 2 currently reads I am file 2.txt. So in order to run the last command, all you have to do is just hit the up key on your keyboard, and you can cycle through all the previous commands that you've entered. And this is just a quicker way of repeating commands. So we're going to run that file again, and now it's done. And let's head over here. So file 2 now reads I am file 1. It's cool, right? So we're able to use Node.js to write JavaScript code and execute it to affect our computer, including manipulating and reading and writing to our local file system. Now, in the next module, we're going to talk about how we can use external modules. So not just the modules that come bundled with Node, which are available here, but actually there's a whole bunch of libraries that other people have written, which we can tap into and we can use using something called NPM. So for all of that and more, I'll see you on the next lesson.